There's a lot of weird stuff about this hole. Dogs are afraid of this hole. Animals are afraid of this hole. And he said, in fact, one of my neighbors once told me that his dog died and he threw the dog down the hole. And he said the next morning that dog was on his porch.
Bottomless pit said to be a pathway to the paranormal.
There is nothing more terrifying than a bottomless black hole that seems to go on forever. In eastern Washington, a deep hole known as Mel's Hole is rumored to be endlessly deep, until experts sent a drone 1,000 meters down and found something that nobody could explain but terrified all witnesses of that footage. What did they see that traumatized them for life? Let us dive deep and explore what is lying inside what might be the deepest hole on Earth, a portal to the dark unknown. In eastern Washington, there's a deep hole known as Mel's Hole, which is said to be bottomless by those who've tried to explore its depths. It was found by Mel Waters, the landowner, who was curious about its endless depth because no matter how much junk was thrown in, it never seemed to fill up. Cameras sent down to see what was at the bottom only captured blurry images that puzzled everyone who saw them. Located on the Manastash Ridge near Ellensburg, this hole resembles a common well, but serves no purpose for water retrieval. Over time, it became a dumping spot for the community, where everything from everyday garbage to broken-down cars and old tires was disposed of. Despite this, the hole's capacity to absorb never seemed to diminish, which intrigued Mel and made him wonder about the actual depth and contents of this hole. Dogs in the area were noticeably disturbed by the hole, refusing to get close and showing signs of fear whenever near it. Mel also noticed strange disruptions in radio signals when he was near the hole, adding to the weird occurrences surrounding it. The depth of the hole was an ongoing fascination, not just for Mel, but for many others who heard about it. In 2017, researchers lowered a camera into the hole in an effort to understand more. The footage was unclear, but unsettling enough to make them leave quickly, keeping the hole's ominous reputation alive. Using his fishing gear, he attached a weight to a line and started lowering it into the pit. He let out 4,500 feet of fishing line, but it never hit bottom. Not giving up, he switched the weight for a pack of Lifesavers candy, thinking if there was water at the bottom, they would dissolve. However, they came back up dry, prompting him to use even more line. Eventually, he had let down nearly 2 miles of line and still hadn't hit bottom. In a staggering display of persistence, Mel extended his experiment to use 880,000 feet of fishing line, more than 166 miles, and still, the bottom was nowhere in sight. This phenomenon wasn't only peculiar due to its depth. The surrounding area was unusually quiet, devoid of birds or insects, although birds seemed to fly over it without trouble. Neighbors mentioned their dogs behaved similarly around the hole, showing anxiety and unwillingness to approach it. One neighbor even recounted a bizarre incident where he claimed his dead dog, which he had thrown into the hole, appeared alive days later, seemingly unrecognizable and distant. Despite numerous attempts to figure out what Mel's Hole was all about, its true nature remained an enigma. Frustrated and baffled by the scale of his find and the growing legends surrounding it, Mel turned to a popular nighttime radio show, Coast to Coast AM, hosted by Art Bell. The show specialized in discussing the paranormal and unexplained phenomena.
As usual, I brought the dogs with me. They wouldn't go anywhere near the damn thing.
Mel hoped the diverse and curious listeners might offer some insights or theories about the strange events linked to the hole. As stories of Mel's Hole spread further, they sparked a mix of skepticism and fascination, illustrating our deep-seated attraction to unresolved, peculiar tales. This tale of a seemingly endless pit continues to be a subject of speculation, drawing attention and debate from all who hear of it, underscoring our enduring fascination with the unexplainable aspects of the world around us. In late February 1997, Mel suddenly found himself in the spotlight after he called into a popular radio show hosted by Art Bell, who was known for his interest in strange and unusual topics. Mel shared information about a very deep hole on his land. This call not only shared his discovery with the world, but also attracted unexpected attention. As the tale of the hole spread, listeners from around the world tuned in, offering advice on how to measure its depth using lasers or explore beneath its surface with radar technology. However, the more the story was discussed, the more it drew unwanted attention. The very next morning after his broadcast, Mel was shocked to find that he was no longer allowed to enter his own property. The military had taken over, claiming they needed to investigate a supposed plane crash, though there was no wreckage or any signs of an actual crash. With military helicopters overhead and armed personnel on the ground, Mel's life turned into something from a film. The hole itself seemed to have peculiar effects. Animals stayed away from it, but plants thrived. Radios malfunctioned, picking up broadcasts from many years ago. Mel's interactions with the military were tense. They made vague threats about his land ownership and hinted at finding illegal activities, trying to intimidate him. As the story continued on the radio, Mel talked about neighbors seeing strange things, like a dark beam of light shooting upward from the hole. These tales were never confirmed by Mel directly, but were eagerly believed by the radio show's audience, who were already familiar with other strange occurrences in the area, like UFO sightings and people disappearing. The audience loved to guess about the hole's true nature. Some thought it was a gateway on a mystical line of energy called a ley line. Others imagined it as an entrance to another world inside the Earth. This wild guessing continued as more people chimed in with their ideas and historical snippets, such as ancient stone pillars that used to surround the hole. What happens next will surprise everyone. A sacred site's forgotten mystery. Despite the growing public fascination, Mel's situation became more difficult. His open talks on the radio might have been attracting too much attention from the government. He continued to provide updates and new details on the show, which seemed to serve two purposes: keeping listeners hooked and perhaps inadvertently informing the government about his activities. When Mel suddenly stopped appearing on the radio just before he was due to give an update, everyone was abuzz with speculation. He later resurfaced with a story about being offered a lot of money to give up his land and move to Australia, with strict conditions to stop talking about the hole and to leave the US. He took the deal and moved, but his longing for home brought him back quietly to visit his family, showing he couldn't fully let go of his past. This extended story, filled with peculiar events and dramatic turns, often seemed over the top. It appeared to play into the hands of those who enjoy spinning conspiracy theories and tales of cover-ups. Whether Mel's hole was a significant discovery or just an ordinary hole that became famous through public fascination and an exaggerated military response is still a matter of debate. What's clear is that the truth behind Mel's story remains as unclear as the supposed depths of the hole he discovered. Mel had planned to go on Art Bell's radio show to share more of his recent experiences, but his day took a wild turn. He was heading to visit his nephew by bus when a huge argument broke out among the passengers. Things got so intense that the police had to step in. After a lot of questions, everyone was moved to a different bus. Just when it seemed things were settling down, Mel suddenly passed out. He woke up completely lost in an alley in San Francisco, with no memory of the past 12 days. His wallet was missing, and there were several needle marks on his arm, suggesting he had been through some sort of medical procedure. He also noticed some of his back teeth were gone, and he could taste blood in his mouth. Trying to understand what happened, Mel found himself caught up in legal issues. He was accused of building structures illegally, things like houses and roads. But Mel was confused because his land had been occupied by the government for the last 2 years. Despite his protests, he ended up losing his property. When Mel tried to get back on the radio with Art Bell, he discovered all his money had vanished from his bank account. People started saying he made up his whole story, but Art Bell, always interested in unusual tales, invited him back on the show anyway. During his second appearance, Mel talked about a TV crew that had tried and failed to find his hole, but noticed a lot of military activity in the area. The airspace above his land had become restricted, and an online satellite image showed just a black square where his land was supposed to be. This image had only appeared on the website 6 months after Mel first talked to Art Bell, so he couldn't have made up his story based on that. Things took another turn when a Native American tribe from Nevada contacted him. They had heard about his troubles and thought he could help them with a similar situation they were investigating. This hole was in a public area where the Basque people lived. They had moved to Nevada from the area between France and Spain in the 1800s to herd sheep and considered the hole sacred. It was about the same size as Mel's hole, 9 feet across, but it had a metal ring around it instead of stone. The metal felt warm to the touch and strangely absorbed sound, as Mel found out when he accidentally dropped a tool onto it. Mel and the Basque people started experimenting with the hole, beginning with lowering a bucket filled. This led to even more questions, as they tried to understand the unusual properties of this second hole. As they conducted tests, Mel felt a mix of excitement and unease about what they might find. As Mel continued to work with the tribe and the Basque people, he learned more about their culture and their deep connection to the land. They discussed the historical importance of the hole and speculated about its origins and purpose. These conversations revealed the complexity of the situation and the various interpretations and beliefs held by the locals. Throughout this process, Mel's skepticism was challenged by the physical evidence and the testimonials from those who had known about the hole for generations. This collaboration not only helped him gain insights into the hole's peculiarities, but also allowed him to connect with people who, despite their different backgrounds, shared his sense of curiosity and determination to uncover the truth. Together, they planned further explorations and more elaborate experiments, hoping to eventually understand not just the physical nature of the hole, but also its significance in the broader context of their respective histories and cultures. As they delved deeper, the project grew, attracting more attention and participation from the community, turning Mel's once isolated incident into a collective endeavor that bridged historical, cultural, and scientific interests. Now, things get even weirder. The ancient creature of the pit. They lowered ice into a deep hole, going down about 1,000 feet, while also keeping some ice above ground to compare what would happen. When the ice on the surface had melted away, they retrieved the bucket from below and found that the ice inside hadn't melted at all. It was still intact, warm, and completely dry, looking more like salt than ice. When they tried to melt this unusual ice with a flame, it surprisingly caught fire instead and continued to burn for an extended period, like several months. This strange behavior wasn't consistent either. They repeated the experiment several times with different amounts of ice. Sometimes the ice melted as expected, but other times it turned into this strange, flammable substance. Then, someone from the Basque group suggested a risky idea. Why not explore the hole themselves? However, this idea was quickly dismissed due to safety concerns, and they decided on a less dangerous but still peculiar plan. They would lower a sheep into the hole instead. Getting the sheep into the hole was not easy. The animal seemed to sense that something was off and resisted being put into the box. Despite its reluctance, the team managed to secure it and lowered the box down to 1,000 feet. Suddenly, the rope stopped. At the same time, a weird humming sound filled the air, making the moment feel even more unsettling. They decided to leave the sheep in the hole for about half an hour. When they pulled the box back up, everything seemed normal at first. However, upon closer inspection, they found that the sheep was no longer alive. The discovery was shocking and made everyone feel uneasy. They opened up the sheep to see what had happened inside, and what they found was disturbing. The insides of the sheep looked like they had been cooked, and there was a huge tumor taking up most of the space inside the animal. Then, the tumor began to move by itself. As if the situation wasn't strange enough, when they cut open the tumor, they found something resembling a baby seal connected by what looked like an umbilical cord, but its eyes were unmistakably human. This creature, covered in a slimy substance and smelling oddly like the air after a storm, seemed to be aware of its surroundings. The group watched as the creature slowly moved to the edge of the table. It seemed as if there was an unspoken understanding between them, as the creature looked at them one last time before jumping back into the hole. The hole seemed to be more than just a simple gap in the earth. It was a portal to phenomena that went beyond normal understanding, challenging their perceptions of what lies beneath us. Before this whole episode began in Nevada, Mel was dealing with a very serious health problem. He was told he had cancer in his throat, and that his time was limited. However, after returning from an unusual trip, something incredible happened. Mel was no longer sick. He felt better than he had in years and believed that his encounter with a strange, seal-like creature was responsible for healing him. This experience completely transformed Mel, making him feel as if he had entered a different world and returned as a completely changed person. As the radio show episode concluded, the host cautioned the audience. The path to where Mel had his unusual encounter was still out there and could be visited, but everyone was strongly advised not to attempt finding it. The host warned that going in search of this place might lead to odd and frightening situations, including the risk of disappearing into the unknown. This cautionary note added a serious tone to Mel's fantastical story, blending intrigue with a hint of danger. A few months later, Mel was back on the Coast to Coast radio show with even more to share, especially about what happened after some strange experiments involving ice that seemed to burn forever. In an incident that seemed like something from a science fiction story, a person from Basque tried to use this ice to stay warm by bringing it inside his cabin. The results were beyond anything he could have predicted. These accounts, whether real or just well-crafted tales, continued to captivate the listeners, feeding their fascination with the unexplainable. Yet, those who are more skeptical might view Mel's stories as mere fabrications or exaggerations made up for the entertainment of those listening to late-night radio. However, these stories, mixing the supernatural with the baffling, provided either comfort or excitement to those who prefer to believe that the world holds more than what we see in our day-to-day lives. Listeners were encouraged to think about what Mel's experiences might mean. Was there really a healing force at work? Or was it just the power of the human mind to heal itself, driven by belief in something extraordinary? The conversations sparked by Mel, stirring both curiosity and doubt, emphasized how unexplained events can deeply influence our thinking and the constant pull of the unknown. The ice that burned was an unusual event that went on for months. It didn't melt, but seemed to suck up all the moisture from the surrounding air, drying out everything in the cabin. This caused problems for the person living there. He suffered from extremely dry skin and was always feeling thirsty. Even boiling water turned into a peculiar challenge. The steam was quickly pulled into the flames as if magnetically attracted. This ongoing scenario grew from merely inconvenient to outright odd. The intense heat from this strange ice weakened the structure of the wood stove and even the floor beneath it. You might think anyone would stop using such a dangerous heat source, but instead, the inhabitants simply fixed the hole in the floor and continued to use the fiery ice for warmth. This decision, questionable from any sensible standpoint, seemed to accelerate the breakdown of their living environment. Eventually, the cabin itself literally crumbled to dust, as though it had just given up under the strain of the strange conditions. When the owner of the cabin came back a month later with his brother, they stumbled upon a bizarre sight. The stove was now positioned 5 feet below where the ground once was, resting at the bottom of a smoothly carved pit. But the legend only deepens. The unseen forces of Nevada's wilderness. This new hole around the stove looked like it could be the subject of a geological study, but lacked any clear scientific reason for its formation. The brothers tried to retrieve the stove using their own strength, but were unsuccessful. It was only with the aid of a large crane that they were able to pull the stove out from its unusual position. But the tale didn't end with the stove's recovery. The place where the stove had sunk formed a notable pit that continued to puzzle and draw the attention of the few who knew of it. The incident of the burning ice and its consequences reminded everyone involved of how unpredictable and uncontrollable the natural world can be when it behaves against the norms. As time went on, the story of the burning ice became a cautionary tale about the hazards of dealing with unusual natural phenomena. It underscored the challenges and risks of trying to harness or live alongside a force that defies usual expectations. While the immediate dangers were eventually managed, the long-term effects and the understanding of what truly happened remained topics of discussion among those who witnessed and later heard about the events. This experience highlighted not only the resilience required to face such uncertainties, but also the profound humility needed when confronting the powerful, untamed aspects of nature. As people started sharing their experiences with the seal-like creature that emerged from the now infamous hole, they described it as a friendly spirit connected to unusual energies from the hole. They spoke of a deep, spiritual connection with the creature, something that seemed to go beyond what they could normally understand. Meanwhile, the appearance of vibrant, fearless birds circling the hole added more intrigue. The local community, referred to as the Basque, saw these birds as a positive sign or blessing from the magical seal, considering them part of a bigger spiritual story unfolding in Nevada. Despite the ongoing discussion, clear information about what's been termed Mel's Hole remained hard to come by, clouded by numerous fantastic claims. Adding to the unusual narrative, the Basque group made a startling claim. The seal had found a way to communicate with them. This communication didn't happen through any recognizable speech, but through a series of beeps and clicks over the radio. They firmly believed that these were not just random noises, but intentional messages from the seal, cautioning them about the dangers of a special kind of ice that could cause disastrous events if it fell into the wrong hands. Art Bell, always keen yet skeptical of such extraordinary tales, pressed the Basque for proof of these claims. They confidently stated they had recordings of every sound they interpreted as a message from the seal. With interest piqued, Art promised to have Mel return to his show to dive deeper into these assertions. He encouraged Mel to bring all possible evidence, recordings, photos, videos, to support their claims. As the show wrapped up with promises of more details to follow, an unexpected event occurred. Mel vanished. This disappearance happened just when proof was supposedly about to be brought forward, leading to further doubts among those following the story. Critics might say that such developments are typical of stories that are more imaginative than factual. Yet this tale continues to engage those drawn to the unconventional, keeping them hooked to a narrative that, despite its implausibility, refuses to be dismissed. Supporters of the Mel's Hole story, whether driven by true belief or a fascination with the unexplained, continue to seek answers, holding on to every purported communication and claimed sign as evidence of something greater at play. However, the absence of solid proof and the timely nature of Mel's disappearance only underscore the critical perspective that perhaps this story, like many others from the edge of paranormal exploration, might lean more towards entertainment than actual truth. This ongoing saga of Mel's Hole, woven with claims of otherworldly interactions and cryptic warnings, remains a captivating topic for those who favor the strange and extraordinary, regardless of the skepticism it attracts. He stopped replying to Art's messages, and then suddenly, his phone line went dead. No one heard from him after that. 5 years passed, and the story of Mel's Hole still hovered in people's minds, always there with its endless what-ifs and maybes, never completely forgotten. Mel's Hole is one of the most intriguing tales from Art Bell's radio show. But what facts do we really have? The exact location of the hole is hard to pinpoint. Satellite images from Terra server once showed a blacked-out spot where the hole was reported to be. Later, Google Earth cleared up the image of that area, but nothing definitive was discovered. Even if the military had taken over the area, as Mel claimed, they could have easily erased any signs of the hole. Many dedicated followers and curious observers have tried to find the real location using the vague details Mel provided. One person claimed to have found a property matching Mel's description, complete with 2 old buildings, one of which had fallen down just as Mel had described. They discovered a hole about 9 feet wide surrounded by a stone wall, just like Mel said it was. For a short time, the online community was abuzz with excitement. Could this really be Mel's hole? But the excitement quickly died down. It turned out the hole was just an old well, with a visible bottom easily seen from above. This conclusion poured cold water on the initial excitement, leading many to wonder about the validity of the initial story. This pattern of finding leads that go nowhere raises the question of why this tale continues to grip so many people. Despite the lack of solid proof, the story of Mel's Hole has a certain pull, attracting both skeptics and believers. The ongoing discussions and attempts to uncover the truth highlight our collective attraction to unresolved stories, even when the likely explanations are quite ordinary. Now, everyone's asking, why can't we let go of this story? Chasing ghosts at Mel's Hole. People enjoy the thrill of the hunt, the challenge of trying to solve a puzzle that might not even have an answer. In the case of Mel's Hole, each new tidbit of information, each expedition that comes back empty-handed, only adds layers to the legend. It becomes a communal tale, shared and reshaped by each person who joins the quest. While the tale of Mel's Hole may provide entertainment and provoke curiosity, it also serves as a reminder of our limits in understanding and verifying the unknown. The continuous pursuit, the digging for answers where there may be none, reflects a deeper human drive to explore and explain the unexplained. In this way, the legend of Mel's Hole lives on, fueling discussions and investigations that, despite often leading nowhere, enrich the folklore and keep the communal narrative alive. Mel is somewhat of a phantom, with no official records confirming his residence in the area he claimed as home. It's likely he used a fake name to keep his identity hidden. A significant issue with his tale, however, is the complete lack of photos or physical proof to support his outlandish stories about the hole. Despite describing numerous bizarre events, there's not a single photo to be found. Whenever radio host Art Bell spoke with Mel, he would ask for photos to validate these wild claims. But Mel always seemed to dodge the request. Sometimes he'd simply say he forgot to take photos, which seems quite unlikely. Other times he'd blame camera malfunctions on some strange interference at the site of the hole, which supposedly made it impossible to capture images. Occasionally Mel would claim he actually had photos and recordings, yet he continually delayed sending them, always promising to do so later. Interestingly, despite the captivating nature of his stories, Mel never attempted to monetize his narrative. He could have sold merchandise like t-shirts or books, or even staged photos appealing to those fascinated by his tale. However, he refrained from such commercial ventures. This could suggest a degree of sincerity, or maybe just a missed chance to exploit the gullible. As time passed, the complexity of Mel's story might have overwhelmed him, possibly leading to his withdrawal from the public eye. Yet, he managed to stick to the same basic story without contradiction for 5 years, even under the intense scrutiny of Art Bell, who tried hard to catch him in a contradiction. The idea of a hole that continues endlessly without collapsing is hard to believe. Such a structure contradicts basic geological principles, tipping the story more towards fantasy than reality. Suggesting that this hole could be a gateway to another dimension is an exciting idea, but it lacks scientific backing. The thrill of exploring the unknown and the appeal of otherworldly adventures continue to capture human imagination, keeping stories like Mel's alive in public discourse. The story of Mel's Hole is something that has been talked about for a long time. It's a tale that captured the interest of Art Bell, a radio show host known for discussing unusual topics. He knew that his listeners enjoyed hearing about strange and inexplicable events, and Mel's Hole was a perfect fit. This story has remained a popular topic for many years, and in 2017, a group of people decided they wanted to explore it for themselves. They gathered up some modern equipment like GoPro cameras and bright lights, and set out to locate this legendary hole using coordinates they found on the internet. Their search brought them to a farm where they came across a massive hole that seemed to go on forever. They threw rocks into it, trying to hear them hit the bottom, but the silence that followed made the hole seem even more bottomless. While they were there, they felt like they were being watched from a distance, which made their experience even more unsettling. They recorded everything on their cameras, but a sudden feeling of urgency made them leave the area quickly before they could review the footage. As they left, they saw a beetle fall into the hole, a moment that seemed to represent the endless unknown that keeps pulling people's curiosity. What do you think? Could Mel's Hole be a real weird phenomenon, or is it just a captivating legend? Comment your theories and don't forget to subscribe for more.